Hey, what's going on YouTube? So, been walking around taking some pics with the Zeiss Ikon Nettar, and I loaded the 35mm film in there. It's not the most practical thing, honestly. Very slow to shoot, but it's a lot of fun. I was using my rangefinder that I bought the other day, and it's a manual rangefinder. It's a Zeiss one from back in the day, and it works pretty well. You use it just like any other rangefinder, where you rotate until the image matches up. And I really like the use of it. The only thing is it makes things so slow. I have to focus the image first with the rangefinder and then set my focus in the camera, put in my exposure settings, and then I can take an actual pic. So as you can imagine, that takes forever. So that's what I mean. It's not really the most practical camera to use, but again, it's a lot of fun. And if you're shooting landscapes or things that are far away, I actually think it's great because then you don't really need to use the rangefinder. And at that point, you can focus pretty quickly and get your settings and just take the shot. If you're trying to focus on anything that's much closer to you, then that's gonna be a problem. And the other thing is, there are no frame lines on this camera. It's just a little viewing window that gives you an approximate view. So that's not that helpful on the original 6x9. So imagine how much less helpful that is when you have 35mm film in there and you cut and you crop off the top and the bottom of the image. So again, not practical, but a lot of fun nonetheless. Definitely recommend you try this out if you have a folding camera and you can do that, because it's fun. The other thing that makes this camera even more impractical is that you can't count your shots. So you're basically estimating the entire time you're shooting. You rotate the film with the manual wind a couple turns and you take a shot, and then you rotate a couple more, trying to guess how far you should rotate to then not, double expose, but then also still save some film. If you roll too much, then you waste film. If you don't roll enough, then you double expose. So it's a challenge, but you kind of get used to it after you use this camera a bunch. I haven't used it enough to know exactly how to do it, but I'm still working on it, basically. So is this the viable alternative to something like an Xpan? Definitely not. Do not even, convince yourself of that, because it just isn't the case. Is it a fun alternative to the Xpan? For sure. Again, not a real alternative, but definitely something fun to experiment with. Hey YouTube, how you doing? So back home now after shooting with the Zeiss Ikon Nettar, and pretty happy with how the experience went. Shooting with that camera is always a bit of an experience, whether shooting 35mm or 120 film. But 35 definitely spices it up just a bit. So pretty happy with that experience. It's always good to get out and kind of mess around with that camera, given that everything's manual. And there's a few possibilities that are thrown in there that you can't really get with a lot of other cameras. Interestingly enough, this camera actually gives you an 85mm image going across, which is really big, especially when you compare it to an Xpan, which is about 65. Then you compare it to my Panoramic setup, which is about 55, and then compare that to a normal 35mm, which is 35. So the image is really, really big going across, and that just changes a lot about the creative capabilities of how to shoot with a camera like this. It's really tough, of course, because you can't see where you're shooting, especially without any kind of real viewfinder or anything like that. But again, the challenge is what's the fun of this whole camera. So that's what I got, YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this quick little walkthrough of me walking around taking a few pics with the Zeiss Ikon Nettar on 35mm film. If you got any opinions or any experience of your own or any suggestions, drop a line in the comments. As usual, like, subscribe, and comment below. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.